Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So before I even get started, I need to give a disclaimer that there is a hurricane going on outside right now, and it sounds like absolute madness outside. Like, I keep trying to film this video and you just hear ruckus outside. Like, it sounds like somebody's beating down my door. So if you hear that in the background, I apologize, but I really want to get this video up, so I have to power through it and just keep filming, even though it's very distracting. And I feel like a hurricane it's so on brand for Pisces full moon. It all makes sense that this is happening around this time. But yeah, in this video, we're going to be talking about the Pisces full moon. I'm going to be talking about any wounds or triggers and things of that sort that you can expect to come to the surface. Every month during the full moon, that's what tends to happen. Like, people tend to feel a bit more emotional, certain things, like past wounds and things of that sort come to the surface. And yeah, it could just be a very heightened emotional time, pretty much. And that's why I really love and appreciate astrology, because it really kind of preps you for these types of things, right? Like, if not for astrology, I would just think that I'm losing my mind once a month, during during the full moon. But because I study astrology, I know what to expect. I know that, it's going to pass, that I just have to ride it out. I just have to self-soothe. I just have to ground myself, and that it will pass eventually, right? So yeah, I wanted to give you guys the heads up about what you can expect to come to the surface. So let's go ahead and get into it. So number one, self-sabotage. Pisces is associated with self-sabotage. It's associated with self-undoing. So during this time, you could be tempted to self-sabotage. Oh, wait, before I move forward with that, I forgot to mention that the Pisces full moon energy, you most likely will be feeling it for the next week. So just because the full moon is today, it doesn't mean that the energy stops and starts today. Full moon energy, I usually feel it a week before it starts and the week after. So even though the full moon is today, this video will apply to the next week, or maybe even the next 2 weeks, depending on like how sensitive you are to energy. So I just had to give that disclaimer. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So Pisces is associated with self-sabotage and self-undoing. So you could be tempted to self-sabotage during this time, or you could be made aware of the ways that you have self-sabotaged in the past. And that's the thing about full moons, is that they could be really good for noticing certain patterns within yourself that are really blocking you from flourishing in life. So like I said, you could be made aware of all the ways that you have self-sabotaged. I know for me, I am a Pisces moon, so I'm feeling this really heavily, and I'm no stranger to self-sabotage, right? For me, my self-sabotage comes in the form of procrastination, putting things off to the very last minute until I'm stressed out and frantic trying to get it done, and also falling into negative thought patterns. So if things are going really good for me, I'll suddenly start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And I think that just comes from just going through painful situations in my past where I was on cloud nine and everything was great, and then suddenly something goes tragically wrong, like in a very traumatizing way. Like, for example, being love bombed by a narcissist and being on cloud nine from that, and then being devalued and discarded by that same narcissist, like being ripped off of that high, right? And that in itself is extremely traumatizing. So every time I'm doing well in life, or I feel like I'm on a high, that trauma gets triggered, and I start falling into negative thought patterns and thinking about all the ways it can be snatched from me and taken from me. And so then I start to self-sabotage. I start to beat it to the punch. Like, I know things are gonna go wrong, so let me just self-sabotage it myself so I can be in control of it going wrong. You see what I'm saying? So that's the beauty of the full moon, is that I'm able to be made aware of these things so that I can make a plan moving forward on how to end these patterns, because it's, like I said, it really can block your blessings and stop you from living a fulfilling life if you don't stop these self-sabotaging patterns. So yeah, that's the first thing that could be coming to the surface during this full moon. So number two, unresolved issues. And when I say unresolved issues, I mean like past issues, past emotional baggage that you could still be carrying with you that's really blocking you from, growing as a person and blocking you from living your best life, right? And the thing about emotional baggage is that sometimes we don't realize that it's there. Like, for example, there's some emotional baggage that came to the surface for me over the past couple of days that I had no clue was still there. I guess I had suppressed it that well because I swore up and down that I had already gotten over this situation. And suddenly it came right back up to the surface during this full moon. So again, oh my God, do y'all hear that? That's literally the hurricane outside. It's so loud and distracting. Okay, moving on. That's the beauty of the full moon, is that this emotional baggage that you're carrying that you may have suppressed, it comes up to the surface so that you can finally face it and release it. Because when it's repressed, it's still having a negative impact on you, even when you don't realize it. So like I said, the other day, a situation happened that brought all the emotional baggage back to the surface. And I'm like, wow, okay, I still have some healing, some clearing, and some releasing to do. And I will say this, I feel like this falls under the category of unresolved issues as well. If there's someone around you that y'all have some sort of issues that may be buried, that has not been addressed, then that may come to the surface as well. So I'm gonna tell y'all a quick little story. I'm not gonna make it too long, but I'm gonna tell y'all a quick little story because it's very on brand for Pisces full moon. So the other day, one of my friends did something so shady. Okay, I'm not even going to get into detail about what they did, but just know that it's very disrespectful and it was very triggering, right? Now, this friend in the past has shown themselves to be shady. I'm not going to lie. They've shown themselves to be shady. They have like a jealous streak in them to where if you're doing better than them in life, they tend to do little shady things to try to sabotage you. And the only reason that this friend was not cut off is because they made it seem like they were working on themselves and they were trying to be better and they see the error of their ways, right? That's the only reason why this friend was not cut off. So with this Pisces full moon, I guess whatever was going on inside of this friend, I guess they couldn't hide it anymore because that past pattern of them being shady came right back to the surface. I don't know if they were lying about working on themselves and they were just pretending that they were working on themselves, or maybe they have been working on themselves, but this Pisces full moon just brought up certain things that they still haven't faced and it brought out their toxicity. I don't know. But yeah, this person did something shady and it was very reminiscent of the things that they've done in the past. And I was like, absolutely not. You're cut off, Miss Ma'am. I think not. And of course, this person, because the toxicity was coming to the surface and the toxicity was spewing out of them, they couldn't just admit that they were wrong in that moment. Instead, they tried to double down. They tried to victim blame. They tried to, no, not victim blame. Well, yeah, I guess they tried to deflect, victim blame. They tried to play victim themselves. They tried to guilt trip. They brought out every toxic thing in the handbook, right? Like the people who are narcissistic and toxic, like the things that they do when they're called out and asked to be held accountable, all the toxic shit that they do, like deflection, gaslighting, and all that. She brought out every single thing in the handbook. And it was just so ridiculous and disheartening. And I'm just like, yeah, this full moon is really exposing you. Like I said, I don't know if it's that she really was working on herself and this full moon kind of knocked her back a couple of steps because maybe she wasn't facing certain things within herself and it brought it to the surface, or maybe she never was working on herself and she was just acting like she was and this full moon exposed it. But anyway, she's cut off. Absolutely not. And I wouldn't even have cut her off if she would have acknowledged what she had did. But when she started bringing out the guilt tripping, the gaslighting and all that, it got to a point where it emotionally dysregulated me completely. And I'm already going through it because I'm a Pisces moon myself. So this full moon is hitting me really hard. So she's cut off. Absolutely not. But yeah, I wanted to tell that quick little story about, unresolved issues because I feel like it fits with this Pisces full moon. So if anybody around you is slipping back into toxic patterns, or like there's certain things that are coming to the surface and they're trying to dodge accountability and play victim and all that, no ma'am, cut them off completely. All right, moving on. Number 3 is difficulty with boundaries. So you could be made aware of maybe the ways that you have not set boundaries strong enough and how it has impacted you negatively. Excuse me. I know that this definitely came to the surface for me. The other day, I was really reflecting on people who I felt sorry for, so I did not set proper boundaries with them. I saw these people as extensions of me. Like I took them on as like a part of me. So it felt like if I was setting boundaries with them that, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. This hurricane outside, it's so distracting. All right, we're going to power through it. Okay. But like I was saying, me as a Pisces moon, right? I have a problem with boundaries. So when I am attached to someone, I take them on as a part of me. Like we are one, right? So setting a boundary almost feels like I'm hurting them in a way. Does that make sense? Like when you're enmeshed with someone, you don't want to set boundaries with them because you start feeling guilty about setting boundaries with them because of that enmeshment, right? So I was thinking the other day about how this has really harmed me in the past. Like, for example, I had a past relationship where, like I said, me being a Pisces moon, we were very enmeshed. I took him on as me. I'm like, you're me, I'm you, we're one, right? So he was doing things that was very hurtful to me, and I wanted to cut him off, but I felt guilty about cutting him off because I was seeing him as like an extension of me. And I'm like, I know how painful it is when I'm rejected and abandoned, so I don't want to do that to someone else. You see how poor boundaries can really like mess you up? Because in that case, he needed to be cut off really bad because he was really doing very harmful, selfish stuff. But I'm taking him on as like another version of me. So I'm like, oh, I don't like to be rejected and abandoned. I would want someone to not give up on me. So I'm not going to give up on him. And what I wasn't realizing was that me and him are two different people. I wouldn't have been doing the things that he was doing to me. You see what I'm saying? But because I wasn't realizing that we're two different people, I was taking him on as myself. I was saying we are one. I wasn't seeing it that way. And so I was trying to extend all this like compassion and sympathy and all that I would have wanted. But we're two different people. I would have never put him in those positions to have to cut me off. I would have never been doing the insensitive things that he was doing. So we were two separate people. I hope that makes sense. So because we're in a Mercury retrograde right now, and I never can get my thoughts out straight whenever we're in a retrograde. But I hope that makes sense. Sometimes, we can have an issue with setting boundaries, and it can really end up harming us and holding on to people that need to be let go of. And also, when we have an issue with boundaries, we tend to project our good qualities onto people. So if we are a compassionate person and we connect with someone, we project that compassionate trait onto them, and we expect them to be compassionate as well. And then we end up blindsided and hurt when they show us that no, they are not that. Also, when you have problems with boundaries, it's very easy for people to, take advantage of you. It's very hard for you to say no to people, like people who just like to take and take and take. When you have poor boundaries, they will drain you completely. Like you'll keep giving and giving and giving, and they'll never stop you. They'll keep on taking. They feel no guilt about it, So if you are a giver, you're someone who gives a lot, you have to be good with boundaries so that they don't completely and totally drain you. Okay, next, isolation and loneliness. Okay, so during this time, you could be feeling more isolated, you could be feeling more lonely, or you could just be thinking back on times in your life where you felt that way, or maybe you have like trauma surrounding isolation and loneliness. Like, for example, maybe you were like the black sheep of your family, and those feelings might be coming to the surface. Maybe you're thinking about how, being the black sheep of your family has affected your ability to connect with people now and to make friends now. I know that's definitely the case for me. I was for sure the black sheep of my family. And when you have an entire family that turns against you, and these were adults, by the way, I was a kid and these were adults that completely turned against me and mistreated me within my family. It makes it very hard to trust people, and it makes it very hard to make like healthy connections community wise, you know. It makes you kind of want to stay as like this isolated lone wolf because you don't want to go through that pain of rejection from a whole community, right? And you could even make the lone wolf thing like your identity because it's like a defense mechanism, right? Like when I was younger and I was in that situation, you know, with my family, I just kind of wore the badge proudly. Like, okay, whatever. They're going to turn me into the villain. They're turning me into the black sheep. I'll be that. You know, I don't care. I'll be that. And I kind of took that on as my identity as a form of self-protection. And I will say that it worked. You know, I stopped caring completely about what any of them thought of me completely because I took on that lone wolf, you know, image with as like a badge of honor. But then as I got older and I, you know, started meeting people who are actually decent people, you know, mostly meeting them through social media, it was kind of hard for me to bond with new people and to fit into a community. And I really wanted that community and really craved it, but it was so hard for me to do it. I just felt so disconnected. And yeah, that's something that I had to work on. So I'm just using that as an example of isolation and loneliness that could be coming to the surface. I will say as well that if you are someone who goes through periods of isolation and loneliness, sometimes that is a part of your path as well. I know for me, I went through a very long period of isolation where I was living alone. And I feel like I went through that because I was really meant to explore myself on a deeper level. Like I was really meant to like dive deep into my own mind, feel my own energy, like really get to know myself really well. And also I feel like it was a part of my spiritual path because when you are alone, that's when you can really connect to God. That's when you can really connect to a higher power, the universe, you know, whatever you believe in. And, you know, that's very on brand for Pisces as well, you know, the spiritual aspect. So I will say that as well. Sometimes a season of loneliness can really bring you a lot of spiritual growth. And it really puts you in this mindset that even if you have nobody else, you always have God. You always have your connection to a higher power. You always have your connection to the Most High. You always have the connection to your spirit guides, to your ancestors, to your spiritual team, right? And there's something very, very comforting about that. So that when you're ready to go back out into, you know, the real world, quote unquote, when you're ready to go back out amongst people, you have this really solid relationship with God that it really helps you to navigate through life, you know? So yeah. And it also brings you a sense of feeling safe. Like when you have your connection with God, you have like this spiritual connection that you cultivated while you were alone. You can go out and meet new people and bond with new people because you know that even if those people, you know, if they don't end up working out, if they don't end up, you know, being good people for you, you'll always know that you have your connection with God to fall back on. So it's like you can go out and socialize with a little less fear because you know that you're safe. I hope that makes sense. Also, I will say that something else that falls into this category is just the feeling of being disconnected from the world. And this can happen a lot with social media, I will say. Like if you're on social media a lot and you see how people's minds work and it's the opposite of yours, it could be a little bit disheartening, right? Like people can be so evil on social media unprovoked. Like it's actually disturbing. So during this time, that could be coming to the surface too. Like social media can be just a little bit more disturbing than usual. And you could be, you know, prompted to just take a step back from social media and just unplug. So next we have hidden fears and anxieties. So that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, any fear that is beneath the surface that you're not aware of, that could be coming up. Any anxieties beneath the surface, those could be coming up, you know, whether they be rational or irrational fears, like those things could be coming to the surface. I know that for me, I have a very, very deep abandonment wound and I'm very aware of it. So, like I know that I have an abandonment wound because I have BPD and it's a symptom of BPD. But it's like sometimes I forget how bad it is. Like sometimes I forget how anxiety inducing that abandonment wound is, because I don't really experience it on a daily basis. Like something has to trigger it, right? So during this Pisces full moon energy, something triggered my abandonment wound and my rejection wound. And my whole body just went into fight or flight mode. Like it felt like I was literally running a marathon. The way my heart was like beating out of my chest, like my whole, like my arms were like in pain. Like I'm trying to describe the sensation. You know how like when you're sitting on your legs, like you're sitting cross-legged and your legs fall asleep, and it's like that tingling feeling when your legs fall asleep. Yeah, it's like that in my arms when my abandonment, rejection, or betrayal wounds, like when those get triggered. Yeah, I can feel it in my arms. I can feel it like radiating all in my upper chest. It's really bad. And it's like, I'm aware that that's there, but when it's triggered, you're like, oh, this is serious. Like, this is a serious fear. Like the way that my body reacts to it, it's like my body is preparing for something horrendous to happen. So yeah, that's just an example of one of my fears and anxieties that came to the surface, that even though I knew it was there, it's like I forgot how bad it actually is. So yeah, you want to be very careful if those things come to the surface. Like make sure that you are self-soothing as much as you can. Make sure that, if you have any type of supportive people around you, like thank God I have, my support system around me. Make sure you reach out to them so that they can, help you through this, because those fears and anxieties, they're no joke. Like the bodily response to them, it's very, very heavy. It's not just about, oh, you feel fearful in your mind. Like your body has a response to it, and that can take a toll on you really badly. So yeah, that's just something to have a heads up about. But like I said before, sometimes it's a good thing for these things to come to the surface, because sometimes we don't realize that they're there, and we don't realize how much they could potentially be blocking us from moving forward and living our best lives. Like for example, let's say that you have some sort of career goal and you feel blocked from that career goal. Every time you try to go towards it, something ends up happening, or you end up self-sabotaging, right? So during this time, maybe you have a hidden fear of failure that you didn't realize was there, and it comes to the surface during this time. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't even realize I feared failure this much. Or I didn't realize that I fear being seen this much. I didn't realize I have an anxiety about failure, or an anxiety about being in the spotlight. And now I know that that's why every time I try to go towards my career, I end up self-sabotaging, and it ends up getting blocked. So that's an example of how like your hidden fears and anxieties coming to the surface, they can, it can shine a spotlight on it, so that then you can remove it, and then you can go forward and live your best life. Okay, so the last one I wrote down is escapism, which I feel like we all know Pisces, like they're known for the escapist tendencies, right? And I'm a Pisces moon, so yeah, this is something I struggle with really bad. Yeah, because Pisces is it's a very sensitive sign, hypersensitive sign, and reality is just too harsh. It is literally just too harsh for a Pisces to deal with. So we have a tendency to try to escape by any means necessary. So for example, like some of us fall into maladaptive daydreaming, where we just spend all of our time daydreaming. Some of us fall into substance abuse, avoiding responsibilities, overeating, oversleeping, getting lost in like movies, TV shows, books, which, those aren't necessarily terrible forms of escape, unless you're like avoiding responsibilities by binging these TV shows. Then yeah, that's not a good form of escape. But yeah, the point is that there's some healthier escape mechanisms, and then there are some unhealthier ones, and those things could be coming to the surface for you during this time, during this Pisces full moon. I would say that this could be a very good time for you to start thinking about some healthy, coping mechanisms that can replace some of the unhealthy ones, right? So if you're someone who, like during this time, let's say you realize that you've been depending on going out and partying too much as a form of escape, maybe you can replace it with something more healthy. Like maybe you could do something more healthy for your weekends, right? Like maybe you can start doing, I don't know, going to like a yoga class on the weekend, because then, it's something that's healthy, but then you also get that sense of connection or community because you're with other people rather than going out and drinking and partying and stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? Some of you are probably like, oh my God, doing yoga is not going to replace partying. But y'all get what I'm like. That's the best example I can give. I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but y'all get what I'm trying to say. Like, it's a good time to just replace any of those unhealthy habits with healthier ones, And I will say that during this full moon, I have been really thinking about, starting back up with music. Like I bought a music theory book that I'm studying, because I used to, like when I was younger, I was really heavily into music, and I stopped, and I would have to do a whole video about that because it's related to my Leo Chiron. But I stopped, and lately I've been getting back into it, and I realized that could be a really healthy form of escape for me as a Pisces moon. And when I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of musicians that are Pisces moons, like Prince, Michael Jackson, Kehlani, SZA, Erykah Badu, Janae Aiko. Gosh, it's a whole list. I know Burna Boy is on there. I love Burna Boy so much. Frank Sinatra. Like, there's a whole list of like Pisces moons musicians. Like, they're all genius musicians. And I really think that's because, again, Pisces moon is associated with, escapism. And I feel like music is like a great form of escape, and it's a healthy form of escape. So, and I just wanted to mention that just in case any of you are looking for a healthier coping mechanism, maybe get into music, maybe buy an instrument. I have a guitar that I'm learning, and I'm also learning how to produce music. Like, I'm learning how to make beats. I'm studying music theory. So yeah, give that a try. And if not music, then any creative outlet can be really, really good for you. As a form of escapism, even if you're not a Pisces moon. Like, this is not just for Pisces moons. I'm just mentioning Pisces moon because, all of this is coming up during a Pisces full moon. This is for anyone who, is more sensitive and, really doesn't like to face the harshness of reality and is going through a lot of difficult things. A form of creative escapism could be really, really healing and beneficial for you. So that is it. That is everything that you could expect during this Pisces full moon. I think I covered all the major ones. And I do want to mention as well that if you're having a hard time, grounding yourself, or you're having a hard time working through this energy, I am going to upload a guided meditation. Well, would it be called a meditation? I guess it's like a guided meditation / guided visualization to just kind of help you move through or work through this energy. So I'm going to be putting that on my Patreon. So if you're needing like something to listen to just to ground yourself, like I said, and just to help you to move through this energy in a way that is as easy as possible, because this energy can be kind of heavy, then yeah, that will be up on my Patreon, and I will put the link to that in the description box down below. And like I said before, tomorrow I will be uploading a tarot video about forgiveness, and it's going to cover, past parents, hurting you. Well, not past parents, obviously current parents, but like parents who have hurt you in the past, and exes that may have hurt you, former friends that may have hurt you. It's going to be a lot of closure going on in that video. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, the guided visualization / meditation is going to be in my Patreon, or on my Patreon, and the link to that will be in the description box down below. Bye, guys.